I think of they family rich.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
think of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems like sometimes you gotta leave your home to be successful with your gifts and talents. And gifts and talents don't just mean athletics. It doesn't mean truck driving.
Right,
It
right.
doesn't mean textiles and all that. Sometimes it's your mind.
What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchet REACT, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another video. Super excited about this video, guys. If you're new to us and we're new to you, make sure you scroll down, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the post notification bell because we're on the road to 100K. And we cannot get there without you guys, all right? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
I want to read that.
Sometimes minorities are on the short end of disparities, as in the United States, Britain, and France, and sometimes it is a majority that lags behind, as in Malaysia, Indonesia, or the Ottoman Empire. Sometimes the disparities are blamed on discrimination, sometimes on genes, but in any event, the disparities are treated as oddities that need explaining, no matter how common such supposed oddities are in countries around the world, or in how many centuries they have been common. Because intellectuals' assumptions about these disparities are so deeply ingrained, so widely disseminated, and have such powerful ramifications on so many issues, it is worth taking a closer and longer look at the facts of the real world, now and in the past. Where minorities have outperformed politically dominant majorities, it is especially difficult to make the case that discrimination is the cause. The problems with genetics as an all-purpose explanation will be dealt with in the next chapter. A study of the Ottoman Empire, for example, found that of the 40 private bankers listed in Istanbul in 1912, not one bore a Muslim name. Nor was even one of the 34 stockbrokers in Istanbul a Turk. Of the capital assets of 284 industrial firms employing 5 or more workers, 50% were owned by Greeks and another 20% by Armenians. In the 17th century Ottoman Empire, the palace medical staff consisted of 41 Jews and 21 Muslims. The racial or ethnic minorities who have owned or directed more than half of whole industries in particular nations have included the Chinese in Malaysia, the Lebanese in West Africa, Greeks in the Ottoman Empire, Britons in Argentina, Belgians in Russia, Jews in Poland, and Spaniards in Chile, among many others. As of 1921, members of the Tamil minority in Ceylon outnumbered members of the Sinhalese majority in that country's medical profession. In America, there were 8 times during the 20th century when a baseball player stole 100 or more bases in a season. All 8 times, that player was black. Groups have differed greatly in innumerable endeavors in countries around the world. In 1908, Germans were the sole producers of the following products in Brazil's state of São Paulo: metal furniture, trunks, stoves, paper, hats, neckties, leather, soap, glass, matches, beer, confections, and carriages. People of Japanese ancestry who settled in that same state produced more than 2/3 of the potatoes and more than 90% of the tomatoes. Exporters from the Lebanese minority in the African nation of Sierra Leone accounted for 85% of the exports of ginger in 1954 and 93% in 1955. In 1949, Lebanese truckers in Sierra Leone outnumbered African truckers and European truckers combined.
Okay.
In 1921, more than 3/5 of all the commerce in Poland was conducted by Jews.
Child, sound like we don't work. Golly. We are killing it in sports, obviously. The highest percentage of people who took the most bases was black individuals. And then all the other departments of corporations or businesses, I don't hear us in there.
Well, he's going around different places around the world.
Yeah, I had that, yeah.
Hearing all of the summaries, the percentages and all of this, I'm hearing that the minority, they'll leave their homeland, go to another land, and supersede the success rate of the people there.
Okay, yeah.
The frugality of Italians was not simply a perception or a stereotype, as A.P. Giannini well knew when he set up this bank. As far away as Australia, Italians earned a reputation for scrupulous honesty in the repayment of their debts, and were frequently able to secure more extensive loans than Australians. At one period of history or another, when it was not one specific racial or ethnic minority...
They knew they had a lot of money, like going back and that they owed, I guess?
Well, at first they built the company just for themselves.
For themselves.
And then they broadened it.
For themselves.
For the world.
For the world, of course, for the world. But at a certain time frame, it was for themselves.
Yes, yes. So
amazing.
That made them be successful. But
That's
when you
amazing.
think of Italians, when I think of Italians, I think of they family rich.
Yeah,
That's what I think of, you know. So it just seems like sometimes you got to leave your home to be successful with your gifts and talents. And gifts and talents don't just mean athletics. It doesn't mean truck driving. It doesn't mean textiles and all that. Sometimes it's your mind.
Your mindset is different. Yeah.
Dominating an industry or occupation, it has often been foreigners in general, leaving the majority population of a country outnumbered or even non-existent in whole sectors of their own economy. Even after the middle of the 20th century, most of the industrial enterprises in Chile were controlled by either immigrants or the children of immigrants. At various times and places, foreign minorities have predominated in particular industries or occupations over the majority populations of Peru, Switzerland, Malaysia, Argentina, Russia, much of the Balkans, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. Indeed, it has been a worldwide phenomenon, found even in some economically advanced countries, as well as being common in less advanced countries. In the 19th century, Scottish Highlanders were not as prosperous as Scottish Lowlanders, whether in Scotland itself or as immigrants living in Australia or the United States. In the 20th century, Gaelic-speaking children in the Hebrides Islands off Scotland did not score as high on IQ tests as the English-speaking children there. Rates of alcoholism among Irish Americans have at one time been some multiple of the rates of alcoholism among Italian Americans or Jewish Americans. In the days of the Soviet Union, the consumption of cognac in Estonia was more than 7 times what it was in Uzbekistan. In Malaysia during the 1960s, students from the Chinese minority earned more than 400 degrees in engineering, while students from the Malay majority earned just 4 engineering degrees during that same decade. Such examples could be extended almost indefinitely, and so could the reasons for the disparities. But a more fundamental question must be faced. Was there ever any realistic chance that the various races would have had the same skills, experience, and general capabilities even if they had the same genetic potential and faced no discrimination? Different races, after all, developed in different parts of the world, in very different geographic settings, which presented very different opportunities and restrictions on their economic and cultural evolution over a period of centuries. There is no way, for example, that the patterns of economic and social life which originated and evolved in Europe could have originated among the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere, where the horses that were central to everything from farming to transportation to warfare in Europe simply did not exist anywhere in the Western Hemisphere when the European invaders arrived and began transplanting horses across the Atlantic to the New World. Take horses out of the history of Europe, and a very different kind of economy and society would have had to evolve in order to be viable. Not only horses were lacking in the Western Hemisphere, neither were there oxen, which were common in both Europe and Asia. There were, in short, no such heavy-duty beasts of burden in the Western Hemisphere as existed on the vast Eurasian landmass, where most of the human race has lived throughout recorded history. The way of life in these different regions of the world had no basis on which to be the same, which is to say, there was no way for the skills and experiences of the races in these regions to be the same. The wheel has often been regarded as fundamental to economic and social advances, but for most of the history of the human race, The value of wheeled vehicles depended to a great extent on the presence of draft animals to pull those vehicles, and there were no wheeled vehicles in any of the economies of the Western Hemisphere when the Europeans arrived. The Mayans had invented wheels, but they were used on children's toys, so the issue was not the intellectual capacity to invent the wheel, but the circumstances that make wheels more valuable or less valuable. Clearly, the way of life among the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere could not have been the same.
Because if I got a light bulb that I invented, and my environment is, you know what I'm saying, like it only gets dark at night, that's the only time I'm able to use it, then that's the only time I'm going to be known to, hey, this light bulb works when this is a certain time. But now it's used for every second of the day, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Circumstances.
So you mean to tell me the Europeans helped create the cars and all that? But y'all be complaining about us being car-centric over here?
Uh-oh. Oh, talk about it.
Just a little dig. Just a little dig. You know, we got
same as that on the Eurasian landmass, when there were neither wheeled vehicles nor draft animals in the Western Hemisphere when the Europeans and their animals arrived. Regardless of which race lived in Europe or in the Western Hemisphere, they would have faced very different opportunities or restrictions as regards their economic and cultural development before they encountered each other, and could hardly have been the same at that time.
Are you looking for...
So how you feel about that? Do you feel like regardless of what race, depending on the time they was living, they had to deal with economic issues? I feel like some of them prospered in these situations.
Yeah, they had to move.
They did do a lot of moving. Yeah, they did do a lot of moving.
You know, just the journey of us here. Of course, we're always going to bring it back to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because that's who we are.
We are them.
So, the journey of us here. We was transported here, and we became the work. We created the work. We were the jobs.
To create our economic
growth of this country.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that was our circumstance.
Yeah. I feel like regardless of the tensions that we have, regardless of how we all view each other, not us personally, but view another group, we all had some interminglings that helped us all be where we are today. This was very informative.
Yeah.
You had to really keep up with the patterns.
Yeah.
You know, but it was informative.
I agree.
Yeah. So we hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Like this video, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. We have enabled our super thanks if you like support the channel that way, as well as our reaction request form is in our description box below and our webpage. Super thanks.
Yeah, that.
Super thanks.
Super thanks.
I messed it up.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon. Peace.